Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. I just happened to be in town on kind of a work vacation kind of thing for the last 2 months, and I missed Dreamforce, so I'm happy to be here for this. I helped to give this talk at Trailhead DX in July or June or something like that, and since then we have done a few things, so it's cool to get to present it again. Show of hands, participation, who's done LWC? Already. All right, that is amazing. All right, who has done local development already? Oh man, awesome, awesome. All right, so some of you guys obviously have seen this before, but I think some of this will still be new. If you have questions, go ahead and jump in. I'll try to answer them, or I'll shuffle them off to the end. I don't have to be anywhere until about midnight, so you guys can ask me as much as you want, though we may end the recording here in about 30, 45 minutes. All right, so you guys know what my next slide is. I am going to talk about some stuff, okay? Obviously, we're going to have a release schedule on here, and it's being recorded, so I thought I'd keep it in there. All right, so I'm Kris Gray. I have been at the company for about 10 years. I have been all over the company, largely UI related. It's kind of what I love doing, UI frameworks. I was involved with the Lightning framework team, so basically Aura framework prior to the Lightning tooling team. I've been on the tooling team for about 2 years, 2.5 years now. Basically, this incarnation of it, I've been here since the beginning. And if there's anything UI related about Salesforce, generally I was at least involved with the questions, and I kind of know some of the direction of what we're doing, so feel free to ask anything you want at the end. All right. This is the rest of the tooling team, the guys that I work with every day. Since I've made this slide, we've hired 2 new developers onto the team. So there's actually a pretty big cast of characters supporting this thing. There's 5 developers. We've got these 2 on the top left are both Raleigh and Atlanta. So we got a bunch of East Coast guys. The PM here, Nate Totten, you want to remember his Twitter handle. He's also East Coast, and then we've got a bunch of Bellevue guys with Adam Drazik, myself, one of the other developers, and then our UX and doc person are in San Francisco. Again, definitely remember Nate Totten. He's the guy who prioritizes everything. If you have any issues, you have any questions, talk to him about our tooling stuff. He's also very involved in the Evergreen stuff, in Apex, DevConsole, that kind of stuff, so feel free to chat him up. So, what is local development? Local development is a Salesforce DX CLI plugin. It helps you be quick with your iterative development. You'll be able to see as you're coding, and we'll go over kind of the list of features here in a second. It also has some VS Code enhancements, so you have integrations right in VS Code that you can kind of launch some things and do the server without having to remember all the SFDX commands. I'm kind of a noob to SFDX, and so that was one of the big things for me is what are all these flags. I can kind of remember the commands, but getting really a wizard at it was kind of a challenge. And really my first foray was this project. The features we're going to talk about here really get us closer to where you would expect a modern framework to be. If you've used Lightning in the past, then you know that it's kind of a different experience than what most modern developers will have in the ecosystem. Obviously, there's Angular and React and Vue and all these other frameworks, and none of them have the experience that Lightning components do. And so obviously, the Lightning LWC experience is let's get us to that place where the platform for Salesforce is just enjoyable. And obviously, this was one of the key tenets for that. We kind of dropped everything to try to make this happen, especially as quick as we tried to get it out there. It's obviously still in beta, but we're going to talk about some of the cool things that are happening as well. So what's in local development, right? Local development gives you rendering on your machine. It shows you exactly what the output of the component will look like when you go to put it in the context you want it to, be it mobile, communities, Lightning experience. It allows you to actually access your data. So it'll take requests to your data via Apex or Lightning Data Service. It'll take those requests, shuffle it off to your Scratch org, make that request, and send it back down to you so you can operate on it locally. This does mean it's not offline experience yet, right? So you still have to do things locally with an internet connection because you need this org. That's probably one of the things we will be addressing when we go GA sometime next year. And then we get additional things like if you have an error in your code, we can, when we take your code and compile it against the dependencies and everything, we can generally say, hey, you have an issue right here, and then I'll show you how we actually take that and make it easy for you and give you this nice dialogue instead of what I typically have experienced, which is unknown exception occurred. We also put in some VS Code enhancements, like I said, which I'll talk about. And then the big thing to note here is that you don't get it for Lightning components. Aura is a different beast altogether. It's half Java framework. All of this was done with Node, JavaScript, right? So we can run it easily on your machine without having to do kind of a large setup. So for now, Lightning Web Components, it's really the best experience. So I'm going to demo kind of what this, what some of the basics are of Lightning, of local dev. Realistically, you can obviously extend this. Development is rich, and we'll talk about some of what the boundaries are of what you can do right now. Why is it still in beta? Well, I'll kind of outline some of those limitations. But as you can see, you get most of the base components. You get most of the errors. You'll get a lot of stuff. But the Salesforce ecosystem is very large, right? And integrating with some of those is sometimes a challenge to have good boundaries. So let's switch over to the code. And so what I've loaded here is LWC Recipes. And if you're not familiar with LWC Recipes, it's a sample project in GitHub that is open source. And so if you come over to Trailhead Apps, LWC Recipes, it's just a sample repo with a bunch of different ways to do the things you might want to do using LWC. And I'm using it for my demo because, hey, it has small examples, it has complex examples, it has events and data, and so it's a great one to demo with, right? And so I've come over here, and I've got this project loaded up. And the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to install the plugin. Right now, because it's beta, we're not bundling it with SFDX. For GA, you'll just get it, and you'll just run the command. But for now, I would do SFDX, plugins, install, and then you get the fancy name dev server from the documentation, and then you would hit enter. I'm not going to do it because it just takes like 30 seconds, and I don't want to wait. But it'll just kind of run and just do its thing. If you come, yeah. No, I did. There we go. All right. So I'm also going to come over here and just show you that in the other amazing tools that we own the playground, we own the component library, VS Code extensions. Here's the component library, which houses all the documentation for LWC. Obviously, you should be using this every day. Yes, sir? Question? No. Oh, okay. And so this is where the documentation is for LWC local development, obviously, and it has all the kind of information in here about how to run these commands and kind of the steps you need to do to get set up. I'm just going to talk through them, but they'll obviously be here later when you want to get it in the component library.
If you're using IntelliJ or something, you out of luck?
So the Illuminated Cloud guy is following along with us, and he is adding this support to Illuminated Cloud, which I think is a plugin to IntelliJ, right? So yes, it's coming along, and he's adding those extensions. He's basically like, we release it, and then either a release behind or a couple weeks behind, he'll just come in and patch it. We are doing all of our tooling for VS Code, making VS Code as amazing as we can, and he's doing the IntelliJ. If you're not doing any of those two, you might be in trouble. Sorry, Sublime guys. I was a big Sublime guy, but I had to switch. So that's the place to be. So that's the place to go for the doc. I'm just going to run. I'm not going to run through it now. So, hey, we ran it. Come on. Hey, so we ran it. Awesome. So the other things that I've already done is that I've set up my dev hub. I've connected to my magical dev hub org, and I've run the command to kind of get this project set up. If you read the doc, it's got a bunch of commands you're supposed to do, but it doesn't really tell you that in here is this org init file, that if you come in and just run this thing, it'll run all of the commands you need to create a scratch org, push all of the data for the components to the org, assign the property permissions, all that kind of stuff, which is really nice. if you're doing SFDX development now, you probably already got this set up, right? You've already got a scratch org, you've already got permissions and your Apex stuff pushed. But for the LWC recipes, you'll need to kind of get it set up, and then you just run that and it magically happens. And that's all I did like an hour before I came here is I ran this file. And now, once I've done that, it's going to give you a pretty message of, hey, org is set up. And then we'll just run the local dev server. All right. And if we don't have any issues with live demos, then this is not usually this slow, but it's going to, all right, so here we've done a little privacy message, right? We're starting up the dev server, and we kind of tell you what scratch org you're using, what alias, because it can get really confusing with Salesforce CX. And then we're good to go. We have a server started locally. So I'm going to click on that guy. It opens me a server. Obviously, the first time it might be a little slow. We're compiling a bunch of stuff. We're kind of getting it set up. In particular, my machine seems really slow in this building. I think I'm connected to a VPN that's kind of slowing things down a little bit. But yeah, and I'm on the guest Wi-Fi. Oh, man. I just plugged this. All right. So these are the components in the LWC Recipes repo. You can go through and see any of them. I'm going to start by going to one of them that I think, just any of them. Let's just do the basic hello, right? And it shows you the component. There it is. I can come over here. Normally, I would try to do some kind of side-by-side thing, but man, everything's zoomed in and super small. But let's just go over here. We'll pick up hello. Let's pick up hello world. We type London here, and then we just refresh this, and we're good to go. Again, really slow right now. But normally, in my office at work, I get like just milliseconds, right? This will just refresh as I'm typing. And here, I haven't uploaded anything to the org. It's all run on my machine locally, and it's just updating normally as I type. And so you can see in the background in the console, it's recompiling. There it is. And then it'll just refresh the preview, right? So this will allow me to at least get my styles right, get all the content right, get it all flowing. If I then want to do a more complex component, I can, let's go back. The ones we like to do is the, let's see, the create record. So if I come in here, now I'm using the Lightning data service. Everything would work just the same if I was using the Apex methods, which this repository does use as far as importing an Apex method, taking your data and calling it as well. And then I can use this eventually when it launches, type in some data, and then it'll create me a contact in my scratch org. So I'm actually interacting directly with my scratch org's data. And usually this is where I'd be typing.
Sorry. If you have some data validation, would you get the errors here? Or?
It'll all work the same as you would expect it to if you upload in the org. If your data validation happened on the server and your update failed, then it will report that error data back to you. Your wire should be able to handle that, and then you do with it what you decide is the right thing to do. Hey, we're going to create an account. I don't know how fast that's going to be, but we'll come over here. This is here's my scratch org. If I go to accounts, then obviously Cloudy McLondon should be here, so it is, right? And you're a scratch org. The thing's going to get deleted in 7 days anyway, so feel free to just interact and do what you need to do. You can delete it. You can do a new one. Do not connect to a production org. Don't do it. You can figure it out, but you don't want to do it, right? Because that's so. It's useful for us internally, but like for automation testing, we do some of that stuff. But it's hard for us to say, hey, is this a scratch org on the client, and say, hey, you can't do that through the CLI. But we do make it hard, and we do certain things don't work generally if it's not a scratch org. So the other thing was useful to show is that if you come in here, let's go back. Let's go down to our clock. Let's look at the clock. All right. So here it's telling me I did something wrong. I can look at the stack trace frames and try to figure it out. But you can generally see from the error that there's only 3 decorators that are supported: API, wire, and track. I'm using one called track without a C, and so I need to update that. If I click this little link down here at the bottom, which is tiny, totally. This little link here, it'll prompt me up here, which I can click, and it'll just take me right to the code, and I can just go through. The the VS Code extensions are already telling me I had an issue, but I don't know what happened. I didn't notice it at the time. Just update that, save, and obviously I'm good to go again, right? And so this is one of the better features of the local development, is that it's going to give you nice errors, and we're trying to tell you how to solve it yourself. And then the VS Code is really useful. Back to the IntelliJ stuff, eventually you'll have an option to say, hey, open in IntelliJ instead. Yes?
And similar to the other question, even if you don't do it via scratch org, can you do it on developer org? Or
So your dev org's not going to go away. So you can mess it up kind of badly with this. So we tell you not to. Please don't. But you're going to need your dev org involved anyway, right? And so really the only thing you're saving yourself is one step of creating that scratch org and then using that. And so I would not suggest it. Please don't. All right, so now the clock is working because I fixed that error.
Question for you. Is there a way to prevent the refresh, to do the refresh when you're working on the Apex side? So if you're working on the Apex controller, for example,
Yeah.
this is what constantly refresh. Is detecting changes in the file?
Yes, it is detecting changes to your components. Do you not want it to do that?
I don't know, just when I'm working on Apex, even if I don't save something, it's going to refresh, going to refresh, going to refresh. I don't know what's happening in this. We should be listening only to your LWC Components directory. Yeah. So if you change Apex, it won't be in that directory, and you should be fine. It won't refresh. But if there's a reason you don't want it to refresh, we can see. But no. I'm pretty okay on the
okay.
LWC side.
Okay.
On the Apex side, not that much, but
yeah, we're not doing a whole lot. We're not doing much for Apex besides proxying the Apex request to the server and getting the result back. So the VS Code, our VS Code extensions really aren't going to get you anything for that either. All right, so that's mostly the demo. Obviously, you can also click this button, and it does what you would expect, which is pull up that component, which I already was in it, so it's not that impressive. But if you take, I wanted to look at, if you take the composed events, composition basics, then you can start seeing the power of the VS Code extensions even more, because you'll get helpers, you get autocompletes, you'll be able to jump around. It does everything that you would expect normal extensions to do. And this is also an area that we're working on a lot to improve, is the VS Code extensions. So let's go back to kind of our little presentation here. This is the slowest computer ever right now. All right, so obviously from that, you've got the install and setup. You've got the rendering. Feel free to change everything. It'll work better than that. It'll be really fast for you guys. The data proxying should just work for you. You never have to like model with that. And then I'll get to you. And then the error stuff is really powerful.
I'll get to kind of the limitations here in just a second. Yeah.
When after you develop all these features, what would they see in your org?
So the question was, once you've done all your development stuff, how do you start seeing it in your org? And that's basically back to the normal flow. You would run the sfdx command, which is sfdx force source push, and then that'll take all your source and put it up to the org, because obviously everything's still on your machine.
Yeah, but what I'm asking is where would you see in your org rather than the page or anything?
Like, how do you see the component in your org? It's kind of up to you and how you want to do that, right? The component just is there. What the LWC Recipes does is it creates some tabs, and it puts like components on those tabs. So if you went back to here, you'd see here's my org. That's my org. So that's my org. And so you can see that there's all these special tabs like composition, child to parent, parent to child. Those are the tabs that this LWC Recipes has created and said, hey, these link to these components. So it's really up to you how you do it, because there's so many things you can do, because this all might have be targeted for communities or mobile, right? And we don't know what you want to do with that. So you're kind of in Salesforce world again after that. More questions? All right. So I guess I didn't even look. Yeah. All right. So we'll get to it in a second. So again, this is how you install it. It's ready to go now. It's been beta for a couple months now, so it should be good to go for you guys. We've had a few issues that people have given us feedback on, and I'll tell you how to do that in a second. There's a single command. If we come back to the VS Code, which you should be seeing, if we run this, right? If you run the command prompt for VS Code, it just has ways to start and stop the server. So you only have to remember the sfdx command, right? You just type that in there and you're good to go. Yes, sir.
What's that local server running on? Because obviously you're demoing on a Mac. Your init script was a shell script. For those of us that are in corporate environments, we're still on Windows. Are we still good to go?
It just uses Express, right? Okay. And so yes, we have people who are using that quite extensively.
Yeah.
It's just like the entire SFDX world is slower in Windows, but it's amazing.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Is it just component by component, or can you actually have multiple components on the page and have them interact with the event?
So you have to compose yourself. So you can't like say, I want these two to live next to each other without writing a whole new component that has them next to each other. So,
It's a composite component, so it's
yeah.
a component that references child components.
Yes, you have to write a new component that does it.
Like a container around it.
Yeah. There's that. There's also, you can't load a component like the clock and provide it like a time zone attribute. You have to load a component that loads the clock and provides the time zone attribute, right? So that is something we want to be able to do, is allow you to provide attributes, but I doubt we'll ever get to the point where you can do two components on the same page at the same time. You'll have to write that yourself.
Are you going to have like in a React or in any node environment, an environment variable that is going to tell you if you're in dev mode or in prod mode? Meaning that if you're in dev mode, I can load test data, and if I am in prod mode, I would call the Apex controller. Because basically, when your controller is not ready, you don't want to get into like the controller side. You just want to work with DTO and stuff. You would like load like a fake data.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to save the question for like 3 minutes.
Okay, good.
So yeah, we'll get to that one. So yeah, obviously there's no step 3. You're good to go. So we did make a big announcement about this. We did presentations at Trail DX, and then after that we announced it. We released it in beta. We did another one in Dreamforce. It is still a standalone plugin based on the feedback here, where people were learning about it at Dreamforce. Like, it just takes a while to get out there that it's this awesome thing that's available. Plus, it's still beta. So go read the blog post. It's got a lot of doc and stuff on how to get started as well. We haven't open sourced it, at least not yet, and so we wanted to get a channel for feedback, so we put up a new repo, the dev server feedback, and you can go there with the issues and just file bugs. You can communicate with us any way you want. There's no code in there, but there are a lot of issues and people talking about things like, hey, this component doesn't work because they don't all work yet. Again, so this now talks about some of the things like mock data and live data mock playback. There's a few. The API is always the issue because when you do an API at Salesforce, it is locked forever, and we can't change it. We can only introduce a new one, and then we support 2, right? So really, that's just so far out because we don't know what the API should be for mock data, but we want to work on that, and that will provide you true offline, right? So you don't need a scratch org. You can just use what's local. So for GA, we have quite a few features that we really want to get to. Getting all of the base components would be nice. Even if they don't work, at least they kind of do something or they tell you something. They don't just die, which like a handful of them do because they expect Salesforce's world to be available, and we only have kind of a skeleton. I'm going to have to read this a little bit. I didn't want to do that, but the component configuration is the editing of the attributes. While you load a component, you should be able to just change the attributes right there and then open source would be nice. Obviously, that's something we're driving for as well because we're not doing anything really all that special for kind of the LWC world. It's cool, but we're building on the back of some other projects that are out there, and we should be able to get that out there. It'd be nice to hit GA instead of the open source target. And then, again, once we do that, we don't need to be bundled separately, which would be nice. The last 4 there are particularly challenging. FlexiPage support. FlexiPages, yeah, no, yeah, woo. FlexiPages, you build right in App Builder or XML, but App Builder, and then you got this XML that describes them. And what it really does is it creates a definition of a component underneath the cover. And like, this, like, what does that mean to local? Like, you're not going to have that XML file here. So realistically, we might have to fake it. It'll kind of look like your layout. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but we want to do it. We want to do it because it's obviously a key feature of Lightning.
What would be the need of FlexiPage?
So if you want to see like an account edit page, and you've like totally, layouts are largely just a grouping of components, right? They even could be exactly what we talked about with the 2 components next to each other, but they're code for your application. You want to be able to see them working and function, and if you can't get them to render, then you can see that this component works fine and that component works fine, but when you installed them, the door slams into another door, and they just, they don't work. And then the containers are particularly important because, again, your component could be targeted towards communities, mobile, Lightning experience, and everything means something different in those contexts. So, hey, change the page from one to another means something in mobile than it does in Lightning experience. The styles mean something differently. You want to see them how it looks like in mobile, but we're just going to show you kind of the base SLDS right now. Even saying, hey, I only want SLDS is something like this container understands events of the Chrome of the application. So that's kind of all on the roadmap, and that's the forward-looking statements that we had to be careful about. And that's about it. So we hit a bunch of questions. What else we got? Yes, sir.
Is there going to be the opportunity to do like the debug in VS Code? So if I'm building like an SFDX plugin, for example, I can run it in debug mode to put breakpoints in VS Code. Is that something that's coming, do you think? Or have I got to still use the Chrome window to do the...
Oh, man. Yes. Let me just say yes, because I'm trying to remember if we already did that. And if not, then like it's close. You do have the browser, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think the source maps are there, so it's pretty close. But linking it to VS Code, I remember us having a conversation, but I would imagine yes, because it's really not that much trouble. So yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last time I checked, this wasn't available, but
Okay.
when will it be possible to see LWC code in the developer console?
Never.
Never. Always gonna have to drag it down.
I can't comment about that part, but the DevConsole it's never really had a good maintenance, and it's kind of one of those you just add more on top of the pile, and then eventually we could add more, but it gets unwieldy, and let's just do it right. So we're gonna, I'm sure, do it right when we get to it, and I agree with you that I have had a love for DevConsole because it's just there. Like, I need code, I need to edit this thing. And I've had to sometimes go in setup and show my list of Apex pages and edit there, and DevConsole just does it. But it's not the right thing. And so we are in the world now where people are doing right things for the LWC. So I can't tell you what or when, but I know we're going to do the right thing for that.
Safe harbor then. Does that allude to DevConsole being sunsetted at some point?
I would imagine, well, everything will get sunset at some point.
Okay.
I think we call it reimagined now.
I would imagine, like I said, we are trying to do the right thing for all of LWC. What is the right thing? What would you guys think the right thing in this situation would be? And if anyone wants to take a guess, then I can probably say that's like where this ecosystem is going in that direction. That's probably what we're doing. And I know there were some rumors about what we were thinking it was going to be, talking about Dreamforce, but it wasn't announced. So I'm not going to announce it on TV, on recording.
Can you mention it in the pub afterwards?
No.
Do
Sir.
you have an update log, as like a place where we can see the updates that you make, and like, are you going to frequently update your plugin until it's GA or?
Yes. We have to. With pre-release coming out, the components that you use to run this thing, you need them to be accurate to what org you're using. So we have these numbers, like you're going to get summer, whatever, or you're going to get summer 220 or 20, right? That is for us like 222 or 224. And so the components that you use need to be the ones that we ship. We can't give you like last year's components because they're not going to be what you expect them to be. The APIs are wrong. So we have to constantly be upgrading per version of the release. There are constantly bug fixes in those. We update those. And then the base underlying framework that we use to run this thing is going to match up with those components. And so I already have a work item to update a lot of what's underneath our covers and the version of LWC. And with that means, hey, every feature we've added and every bug fix we've added since then is just going to go out. So yes, it'll be like when we GA, basically you'll get like 2 new features because everything else should be out.
Is there a place to see what you fixed?
Not yet because we're not open source. The feedback will have responses on, hey, this is closed, we just shipped it, we've already fixed a few things, things have gotten closed. So the feedback issues is the best place to go. I wish we were open source, but there's too many hurdles right now to get that there, and so we're focusing on the features. But that'll be there. And at the beginning was my Twitter handle. There's Nate Totten. You can always ask him. I'm sure he's glad to tell you guys anything that you really need. From my experience, most of the PMs, it's just like it's volume of feedback to the PM that really drives a lot of these stuff. So don't be shy. Yes, sir.
Last week I had to add support for Internet Explorer to my components. So it does the local server to the Polyfills, it's called, I think.
So if you're wondering, does any of local dev do any polyfills for anything? It does for itself, right? But we don't want to be giving you that stuff. one of the things that like people wanted from Aura previously is like, hey, I need all these, I need to fire events, I need to manage this stuff. It's like, it doesn't do any of that because then we have to be involved with that. This stuff should all work with Internet Explorer because it we should polyfill ourselves, all the APIs should work, we don't do anything special. And in the things we do special, we polyfill for ourselves. But we don't want to provide anything for you because then we have to maintain that. And if your stuff breaks because our polyfill breaks, then we have to maintain it. So we're not going to give you anything special, but feel free to include it, right? Because largely you can just drop the file in your module and then import it. You kind of have that code, which is different than Lightning for sure. Does that answer it well enough? Okay. All right. Yes?
This is like not really that related. It's very, very minor as well. When you right click and you try to deploy a component, you've got delete above it. Is there any way to change that?
Yeah. You're in that. No, not yes, you can. I think yes, I agree that.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
You say not put the big red button next to the coffee machine. So I would imagine so. I will take that feedback and pass it on to the actual guys who implement stuff.
Okay.
I assume we have control over that.
I spoke to Nate Totten about that one, and the general feedback is, well, you're getting "Are you sure?" prompt. What more do you need?
Fine.
I think it's slightly tongue in cheek, but I think generally it's way down the list.
Yeah, I imagine so. It was just like hopefully like a quick fix, just to be like, okay, yeah, now just switch those around.
Right, move the code up 3 lines and you're good, right? Yeah, I don't personally implement that feature, I think, because that is a different part of the CLI. But, I would say talk to the guy directly on Twitter who owns that, and he's got a couple hours at night to play with things. He might be willing to, but like you can talk. Nate Totten's the best guy, right? And he's the guy to do it, and he's going to try to shield those guys who are doing the super important things that want to release Dreamforce from the minor stuff that slows them down, and that's why we don't do that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, but obviously it'd be nice if we open source it so that you can do it yourself. Yes?
Oh, I was going to...
Oh.
There's always one more. Right,
Well, like again, I'm here for the next at least hour, so you can talk to me about anything, and I'll let you know.
Extreme edge case here, and I've got a reputation for being a classic holdout. But so local development as it meets lightning out. Is there anything in that space so that you can see how it would render out on a classic in the lightning out scenario?
That was the container stuff again. I don't know if we'd invest in a classic container just because we'd prefer you not invest time there, but we understand like you have requirements and use cases and customers want you to do it.
My client,
Yeah, you get paid to do it. The containers should solve that, and realistically it's just like what APIs are available, what's the CSS in that situation, and then we'd provide you a value you can put in that container property that says classic or mobile, and so that's ideally it should do that. If we did that. I'm not sure that could get prioritized.
Cool. Well, I think that's probably all for now.
Awesome.
We are going to go to the pub, right?
Yes, pubs.
Continue there. So, quick round of applause for Kris, please.